Boys and ghouls, to all of our non-binary friends, to everyone on the spectrum and in between, welcome to another episode of The Shutter Show. I am one of your hosts, Ken Stagnick, and with me, as always, is Mr. Katie Sexton.
What's up, peoples?
Yeah.
How you doing? How you doing, best man?
I'm doing pretty good. Mr. Katie Sexton, do you want to tell the listeners at home the primary reason that we have not been recording episodes, why this is all your fault?
I mean, first of all, it is David Katie Sexton to you.
No, David Katie.
Yes, I think for those who have been like regularly keeping up with the podcast, which Ken has been nice. Actually, we've gotten a couple of messages via social media of people literally being like, "Hey, like, when are you going to post your next episode?" Which has been It's always a nice thing. But it's nice to be missed.
Yes. Thank you, people.
Thank you. But no, so as most might have noticed, we have taken an abnormally long amount of time away. And
yeah, like 2 months. It's been a minute.
Yeah, for 2 months. And like that is for several very specific reasons. The first one being Ken, like just because of just all the madness that was 2020 and 2021, like you moved out of Los Angeles to Colorado. You'd moved from Colorado, then kind of back home to San Antonio, and San Jose. Sorry, not
very different.
Very different. Sorry, San Jose, and then you lucky boy, you took a very much needed vacation / job in Hawaii for over a month, where you got to
vacation is
to work a feature.
Term. Yeah. I worked. I gaffed a feature. For the people who are not in the industry, gaffing is the person who does the lighting. But yeah, I got a job in Hawaii for a month. And let's be clear, it was like 6-day weeks and 12-hour days. So like vacation is a strong term. That said, it was in Hawaii, which wasn't so bad. Which I enjoyed.
You guys, you should definitely check out Ken's page and his Twitter handle to see some of the many pictures from his Instagram is probably better for figuring out or for finding Hawaii shenanigans. It looks like you had a blast.
Yeah, no, there was a lot. I got to drink coconut straight from the coconut. I got to go in a stunt airplane. There was swimming in water that was bluer than I understood that water could be. There was just it was just getting to be in the jungles of Oahu. But like, here's the other crazy thing that happened. I was the best man at
the best of best mans
at this dude's wedding. Like, David is no longer a bachelor. I'm sorry, ladies.
Nope.
I'm sorry, the internet. David is off the market now because David got married. And I was there as the best man. And I'm very proud to say that a man who is perpetually late all the time was not late for a single thing pretty much at this the entire event. So I got that.
You also got to discover that is not just a me thing. That is a Marlowe thing.
Oh, yes. This man's whole family is just wrecked.
There's we'll move to the film here in just a minute, but yeah, there was a definite point, I think, that was the pinnacle Marlowe moment that was displayed in my brother. So for the ceremony, Katie and I, my now wife and I, did a time capsule that we're going to open a year from now, where we had our whole wedding party, including our parents, write out letters addressed to us a year later. And we put it in a box with a nice bottle of wine. And on our anniversary, 1 year from now, we will open them and read them joyously and hilariously. However, when it came to 5 minutes from the ceremony itself, and Katie has, and we've talked about these notes to you guys multiple times. 5 minutes from the ceremony, she texts me, is like, hey, could you check to make sure all your groomsmen have their notes? And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Like, Nick, do you have your note? Nick says, yep, got it right here. Ken, yep, best man. And then we all look to Ben, and Ben just has this look of,
this is the first I'm hearing of this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like what note? And not like, so that gives us a sign that, oh no, he hasn't left it in the room nearby where we can just run over real quick and grab it. Oh no, he didn't do his homework. And yes.
and now we are in a room with no pens and no paper. And so it became a less talkie, more acquire paper and pencil. From where? Literally anywhere.
Ken, you went into best man mode so quick, and I'm so proud of you.
I immediately went and smooth talked the bartender, and I was like, look, I understand. Pens are very valuable when you are bartending. This will come back. But this is a best man emergency. We are having a groomsman problem, and I need a pen. And I promise you this pen will come back. And that pen did come back because I was, in fact, the best man.
Yeah. And your whole time you were on him like a hawk, literally sit down, shut up, right. At one point, like he has a real Marlowe ADD moment. Someone mentioned the Red Bulls on the table. Like, I think those are for the photographers. And he goes, oh, do you think I could get a Red Bull? You're like, shut up, right.
Yeah.
It was. I look back on it so fondly, but yes, we are not here necessarily to talk about the wedding, which was a grand old time.
Well, I mean, the other thing we should briefly talk about is now what will become the mythical lost episode of Shutter Show.
Let's talk about that real quick.
We tried to record an episode while I was in Hawaii and before David got married on the movie Everly, starring Salma Hayek, directed by Joe Lynch, which is a super fun little movie that I highly recommend. And I believe David would recommend as well.
I would recommend it as well.
Out, right? Yeah,
it's a good time. It's a little it can be, the pacing can be a little all over the place here and there, though. Like, I personally enjoyed it. I actually think, like, in the long lost episode, like, there were a couple of good topics and conversations that were had, but ultimately, man, that was a tough one to wrangle.
It's not a perfect movie, but everything kind of went wrong simultaneously. And then when we went to come and record the episode yesterday, it turned out that movie is no longer on Shudder. So instead of doing our episode on Everly, which, if I remember correctly, is one we I can't remember if people voted on or if we just decided on. But
I think ultimately we voted on it because it was between that and I can't even remember what it was between. I'd have to go back and look if I can. But it was it's just like unfortunately just the pieces weren't in place for us to get a proper, like, quality recording that we could stand behind. Like,
the internet was terrible where I was in Hawaii, and then we had audio problems with my microphone, and then we kept calling the movie Evelyn instead of Everly, and then there was other discussions about proper nomenclature of the thing. It was a whole to-do. So instead of recording an episode about that, we have spent the last 24 hours preparing an episode about Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978. The Philip Kaufman. Oh, just a great movie. I rewatching this movie, I was taken aback by how good it is, how weird it is, how
very rewatchable.
Very rewatchable, and also how impressed I am with how much the people involved are not necessarily who I was expecting to be involved.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't feel like a Philip Kaufman movie because Philip Kaufman gets out of the way. I was not expecting this to be a Michael Chapman photographed movie, but he gets out of the way and kind of does a Gordon Willis thing. Like, this movie is everyone showing up and doing what's best for the movie.
Everything down to this. sound mixer. Yeah, like the sound mixer. Ben Burtz, I believe is his name.
Yeah. Do you not know who Ben Burtz is?
Oh yes, like granted, like
the,
sound designers aren't the names that I memorize too often, but
he's the sound designer. Like he's
you like some Darth Vader? Oh
yes, I mean like he invented this. Like it's him and Walter Murch are the two guys who invented modern sound. Like literally, they're the guys who invented going and getting sound from something other than the set and doing it.
They were also like one of the bigger innovators behind Dolby surround sound. Like this film is one of those films like when Dolby surround sound was becoming more of a thing, like with Star Wars, with Apocalypse Now. I think even The Third Kind was also another film that that Dolby surround was first utilized on. But this film was often what they would use to promote Dolby surround because it like holy crap, it's incredible. Yeah, no, everybody shows up to work.
Everybody shows up to work. This has it has some of the earliest work of what is it? I believe it's called Dolby Sonic. I could be wrong, but where like the sound moves around the room through the different speakers and gives you
it immerses you.
Well, like it immerses you, and it had been used in albums. It had been used in audio recordings, but it hadn't really been used, or actually more like utilized in film.
Yeah.
Until this, and this movie, which also is a movie we should talk about because it's a movie that's been made like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times at this point.
As far as like motion pictures go, I think it had like 4 major studio motion pictures.
It's up there with like the Three Musketeers as one of the most adapted and best adapted film series or film stories of all time. There are a lot of stories that have been adapted a lot. However, there are very few that batting average wise are pretty great. And this is definitely one of them. I would argue the 56 movie is pretty great. This movie is great. The 93 version by Abel Ferrara is very interesting. And then actually the 2007 version is one I haven't seen. But Invaders from Mars, both the original and the remake are pretty good in my opinion, and The Faculty is pretty good in my opinion. And they live. Yeah,
and they live. Incredible.
Yeah, and they live. Like this is a for a series. The batting average is very high. It's very good, and I mean, I love everything that's going on in this movie.
Oh, and I saw The Faculty as a young kid, and actually like. This is back like because my parents divorced when I was really young, and so my dad, trying to keep a young boys entertained and still at least regard him as a moderately favorite parent, took us to see films that we definitely shouldn't have been seeing at that age, and The Faculty was one of them. And I remember like it freaked me out so much as a kid, just the idea of like this foreign entity that looks like people that I know and trust coming into like envelop me into their fold in a very violent way freaked me out as a kid. Like it takes place in school, obviously being a kid in school, that just kind of, it puts you in this very uncomfortable element. And so I actually go out of that movie early and then saw it again later, finally in the brightness of day. But then also I watched that film for the first time when I was in college. Indulging a little bit on mushrooms. I will not say whether they were illegal or not illegal, but
just that like was porcini mushrooms. Some
exactly. Oh, absolutely, the most mushrooms. Delicious of mushrooms. But literally, the first time I had ever tried mushrooms was.
Yeah.
I decided, you know what would be a great thing to do? Let's watch The Faculty. It's so. But no, this film. has paved the way for so many amazing adaptations and remakes. I have not seen the 90s version, and I have not seen Invasion with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig yet, but I have seen the first original two and many that are kind of like spin-offs of or sort of based loosely on Invasion. And it's a definite multi-hit, kind of like yeah, I would argue with you, I would agree with you in that, kind of like the Three Musketeers, this is just one of those properties that gets very good attention.
It's very well adapted, which I guess is now that I'm thinking about it, not something I've heard people talk about very much. But as a whole, it seems like more people than don't get why this concept works. And I would argue it's because this concept feels very real as someone who has I would like to think that over these last couple of years, it's probably, well, all right, I would not like to think this. Unfortunately, I believe this to be true. I feel like a lot of people over the last couple of years have discovered that maybe some of their friends or family are a little closer to pod people than we would have believed or
Yes.
were. And so, like, so much of this movie reminds me of the paranoia, the creeping dread, all of the things that go along. Like if you have a family member who is all about the QAnon, then this
Yeah.
movie to me probably I have to assume
The flower could easily be the algorithm.
yeah, like I have to assume this movie hits different now. I'm
Yeah.
very lucky in that I have only had some fringe family members who have bumped up against the QAnon oeuvre.
Yeah.
So I
It's
haven't had too much of that, but I've got to assume it feels almost exactly like this. There's just so much, and also we need to talk about like not like how much Philip Kaufman and Michael Chapman are able to capture the paranoia, the uneasiness, the weirdness of regular life. But a lot of stuff I also feel like I wouldn't have appreciated until the pandemic ruined everything. The
yeah.
the just like how much people walking around, people standing on a street corner, things that normally don't feel weird, that just become weird because life is weird. And this movie has so much of that, and it has it in its camera work, and it has it in its
Just
chill.
the staging, the staging of all the
Yes.
extras, the look, there's a point when I was rewatching it that I hadn't noticed watching it around the first time. There's a point where Matthew is talking to Elizabeth near their department at the Department of Health, near their office, and they pass by a door, and in the window you kind of just see this man staring at them.
Just doing like one of these for no reason at all. Yeah, it's
Yeah, just kind
amazing.
of like a, and it like, and I like it, and it happens, and it's never addressed. No one ever
Yep.
no one ever notices this man, but he's just kind of there,
It's
kind of
both
like,
fine and not fine at all.
yeah, not nearly as a little bit more subtle than than the creepy priest swinging on the
Oh,
swing set watching all the
not
children.
just any creepy priest.
Yes, was this
Robert,
who I thought it was?
yeah, it's Robert Duvall.
I
So
thought so. A creepy
so it
Robert Duvall priest.
yeah. So it turns out Robert Duvall was just in town for another thing, and him and Kaufman were friends. And so Kaufman was like, every horror movie needs to have a priest in it. Do you want to be a priest? And he was like, fine. But because of how agents work and everything, like his minimum salary was way more money than production could handle. So he did it in exchange for an Eddie Bauer jacket.
I mean,
Yep.
I think it's a solid payment right there.
I mean, he was pretty. He was cold when he was the priest. He wore the jacket. He took it off, played the priest, put the jacket back on. He got to keep the jacket, and that is how Robert Duvall.
Oh God, who was the actor who did the voice? What film? I'm trying to remember what film it was, and we discussed this. He did this voiceover. Oh, for Texas Chainsaw. The voiceover was done for the cost of an eighth of weed.
John Larroquette.
Yes,
is the voice. Yes, yeah. No, exactly. The other super interesting cameo, I guess in quotes, in this movie is the banjo music that is provided at the top half of the movie, like in Act 1 when things are getting spooky, is provided by Jerry Garcia.
Shut the fuck! Really?
Yeah.
Was that was that actually Jerry Gar? No, that wasn't.
So Jerry Garcia is not in the movie itself. However, Jerry Garcia and the sound designer were friends, or the musical supervisor, and she just needed three bars of banjo music.
Yeah.
And it turns out Jerry Garcia was a friend of Philip Kaufman. So he
you want to come over, just give me 3 bars real quick?
Yeah. And he was like, yeah, sure, fuck it, why not? And came over and did that. So that's what that music, so that music is just, again, 2 little cameos. At one point also the DP, Michael Chapman does show up. He is the janitor with the big polisher.
The real they were oh gosh, and Don Siegel, he talks quite a bit in depth about, because there's also a really good just 17-minute making of on YouTube as well that I highly recommend people check out. I think it was for one of the special edition Blu-rays that was released on the 40th anniversary or something. He talks about how they were very choosy when it came to picking some of the first pod people, so to speak. They're no, they had to have a certain energy about them that was off-putting but normal. And it's the idea also too, and then you have Michael Chapman, anytime that there were just sort of pod people in the background or for specific shots, he would almost add a little bit of a purplish tinge.
There's purple and green light, the use of ultraviolet to signal who the pod people are. But we should also mention, speaking of Don Siegel, the original director of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, is in the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, as is Kevin McCarthy, the original star of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes, he came back ranting and raving before he gets hit by a supposed car.
Yes, what Philip Kaufman said was his idea was that Kevin McCarthy, who, let's also be clear, wild that Kevin McCarthy, whose last name shares its name with McCarthyism, is in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is about the paranoia of the 50s. But then the idea...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and then the idea that Philip Kaufman had was that guy ran out of the small town screaming about how they're here. And he's just spent the last 20 years screaming that, and everyone's been ignoring him. And now that he's made it to the big city, boom, they hit him with a car and he's done so.
Yeah, I know the extras and the cameos are done just in such a divine manner. It's so well done.
And then Don Siegel is the cab driver in the 70s version.
Yes,
drives them out of town.
There's a hilarious story that Donald Sutherland tells about that scene when they shot. That apparently, this man is unbelievably blind. Mm-hmm. and cannot see very well without his glasses, but during that shoot did not want to be wearing his glasses while they were filming, and so the looks of unease between the characters Matthew and Elizabeth, that is literally those 2 actors terrified because this director cannot fucking see where the hell he's going. They are so uncomfortable, and there were so many near misses where they're just and he would just look back, treat it like it was nothing. And they're just I don't know if this is smart. They was but yeah, kind of like going a little bit back to what you were saying about like McCarthyism. I think one of the things that I find very fascinating with this as a franchise or as a property in general is that like the first film done in the 50s, it was the director doesn't claim to have been trying to do anything necessarily or say anything necessarily political with this film. He says like, I was just trying to make an entertaining science fiction film, and sort of it became, the theme became what sort of the audience made of it. And but it was a kind of a 50-50 toss-up whether that film was talking about communism or about McCarthyism, which I find very, very fascinating.
To me, that kind of pretending like you didn't know what you were doing is kind of like how George Romero was like, I never thought about casting a black guy in Night of the Living Dead. He was just the best. He was just the best actor we had around. And it's like, yeah.
Were you?
But you also knew what that meant. Like,
yeah,
don't get me wrong. You might not have decided, like,
it was also kind of dangerous at that time to come out as like anti-McCarthy.
Well,
like it was a little riskier at that point.
There's a difference between making a statement and coming out and saying that you're making a statement.
Yeah.
Those are very different things. And I think both of these are great examples. All three, I would say, both the original, this version, and then also Night of the Living Dead are great versions about making a point without making a point.
Yeah. This property does very well at being timeless. Kind of like a lot of, for example, well, I'm not in terms of like equating the type or quality between the two. Like, I think one of the great things about Shakespeare, for example, is that most of his plays fit pretty well in a just about any time or any timeline aesthetic, at least. And so like the 70s film that we're talking about was more of a discussion on like the pod people then were sort of more of the like tie wearing, suit wearing, Republican conservative,
the IBM version of them versus the like, because like the original version is very much caught up in the working class Soviet Revolution kind of farmers Marxist kind of an idea of what communism coming to America would look like. Where this is much more the they live corporate, just get in line, the nail that stands up gets hammered down kind of corporatism. And this really opens up what's going on from the quiet suburbs and small towns to what's going on in the city and why the cities are the center of this kind of indoctrination.
Yeah. The first one, definitely taking place in a small town, had the message, at least, or the theme was a little different or could be taken a different way. And I know like Don Siegel specifically wanted to do San Francisco, right? That was where it was.
Yes. No, it's absolutely San Francisco, which is a perfect city for this. It shares its location with movies like The Conversation, with The Game, with Vertigo, movies that are almost always about paranoia. There's something about the
fear of the other, really like.
Well, there's like it's a town. If you think about the history of San Francisco, it's a town on the edge of our discovered coast because because America, quote unquote, was discovered when we stumbled across a place everybody lived on the East Coast and then moved west. So San Francisco became one of the last undiscovered places. It is covered in hills, so everything is uneasy. Everything is a canted angle. Everything is like, even if you are looking at a building flat, everything is at a diagonal. There is something uneasy about it. There's a reason that movies like the movies that I think about when I think about this movie, I think about movies like Clute, and I think about Don't Look Now, not just because they also share Donald Sutherland, but because their cities are places full of things where we don't know what's going to happen around the next corner.
Yeah.
And like, man, if this movie captures anything, it captures the weirdness of normalness, whether it's underlighting, whether it's the blue and green lighting, whether it is the shooting through windows and glass, shooting down hallways, reflections, the amount of handheld work that's going on, the amount of just people watching, running for no reason, odd looks, that guy through the window that you were talking about.
Yeah, just things that draw your eye for even just like a second.
Just the way that they make garbage trucks become so ominous is a real testament to how much Kaufman and Chapman are able to make this movie more than just the sum of its parts. It's
flowers almost, too. Like anytime there's any kind of vegetation, the vegetation is ominous.
Yeah, the fact that and it's something that someone who grew up in the Bay Area, there is something about the Bay Area and the kind of light that's here. Everybody wants to hang plants and have ivy and ferns and stuff in their house. And if you were to think that stuff was sort of nefarious in some way, shape, or form, suddenly there's this weird undercurrent in San Francisco that, man, Philip Kaufman just captures in a way that I can't think of another movie that really does. Other movies I think have come up close to it, but this man, it's so good.
And I've got a really great comment here from this article in the Hollywood Reporter by Kaufman, where that goes into his reasoning behind why he chose San Francisco. And that goes somewhere along the line. I've got it up here. It's it could happen in the city I love the most, like the city with the most advanced progressive therapies, politics, and so forth. What would happen in a place like that if the pods landed there and that element of poddiness, as in like pod people, like that term was spread? In other words, the challenge in making the film would be even greater to approach it on how it affects the psychology of people. Jeff Goldblum, for example, that kind of quirky, quintessential San Francisco poet character, he may be an outsider, he may be isolated, he may be laughable, but he's very human. And even if he's self-absorbed, there's a quirky humanity that he has. Leonard Nimoy's character, whether it's pop psychology or progressive psychology, his character undergoes a certain kind of transformation, and there's a tragedy in that.
Leonard Nimoy's character, hands down to me, is the scariest character in this movie, because let me be clear, this Leonard Nimoy books, and he's so rad. And you also understand how he could be the scariest, worst, most horrifying character of all time.
Because all the people that he talks to and tries to advise are women.
Yeah, that dude is either the most or least groovy dude who's ever existed. And
he exists in this medium where he can hide.
That is a great way of describing that exactly. And we should also talk about Jeff Goldblum. We should talk about Veronica Cartwright.
Mm-hmm.
So many every performance in this movie is great. All of the supporting performances are especially great, especially when you realize none of these people were really anybody. Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, Donald Sutherland was the big name on the poster.
Yeah, he was the only known quantity. Everybody else was just like a footnote. Veronica Cartwright, I guess, she was the little girl in The Birds, the Hitchcock movie. Yeah, cool.
And then she did Alien before this.
Yes, no, they're well, Alien's like 79. So I think Alien is a year after this.
Oh, is that though what if did Alien release before this or did this release?
Well, this is 78 and Alien's 79.
Oh, okay, so this got released 70. Okay, okay. So
But
yeah, I
yeah,
guess
but like, you know what I mean? But like nobody was going to go see, a Veronica Cartwright movie. That's not a thing that
exactly.
happened. Like she might have been in it, but like she wasn't a thing yet. And
Yeah.
she's so great in this. She's
Yeah, but
her and
now you
Goldblum.
see her, or if anything, like hear her voice, and that little there's a cadence in her voice when she gets panicked that you recognize immediately.
Mhm.
But no, like the performances are stellar, and the the chemistry between Donald Sutherland's character, Matthew, and Elizabeth
Oh, amazing.
is incredible. They one of the most charming moments for their characters in this film
The eye
is when
shaking
she
scene, right?
yes the eye
Yes,
shaking
so
scene.
good.
It's just such a character building moment between the two of them that convinces you as an audience, oh, these are people that I want to root for. These are
Mhm.
very sweet human characters. They have humor. They have like their lives are complicated, but
They're
at the end
human,
of the day,
just like us.
you know that they're doing their best to be good people,
Uh-huh.
and you can tell like all throughout that, and especially like Donald Sutherland's such a subtle performer, and there is the obvious undertones of there is some kind of emotional cheating happening here between me and Elizabeth, because she does have, I don't think it's a husband, but I think it's a boyfriend, right? Or no,
Yeah,
it's a
there's definitely
boyfriend's used at one point, and so
there's definitely something going on between them, but like it is very much like
he genuinely cares.
the only other scene that I can think of that is on par with the eye shaking scene in this is the scene in Jaws
Yeah.
where Roy Scheider is doing the finger game with his younger son, and his younger son is mimicking him, and you're watching the wife watch them, and it's like the cutest thing in the world. And basically at that point, every audience member stands up in the audience, soaks every seat around them in gasoline, and says, I swear to God, Steven Spielberg, if anything happens to this man, I'm going to light the theater on fire. And then Steven Spielberg is smart enough to not call that bluff, because you want these people to make it through. A fun thing I just realized, David, that Veronica Cartwright has in her horror oeuvre, which I did not realize until now. So I assume you've heard the story about when they shot Alien for the first time. They didn't really give the actors a heads up on what was gonna happen. Like they knew William Hurt
Oh,
was in
with
there.
the chest bursting scene.
Yes, they just kind of was like, all right, we're gonna call action, and then we're gonna see what's gonna happen.
Yes, I am aware of that story.
Are you aware that the ending of this movie was shot in a similar way?
Oh,
Yeah. So Veronica Cartwright was not told that this movie was going to end. And it's not going to be very hard to like back your way into figuring out how this movie ends. However, I don't think we should spoil it. But I will say this. The way the movie ends is not what Veronica Cartwright was told. Veronica Cartwright was told the opposite was going to happen. So when the thing happens and she's all like, that is a genuine reaction, just like when she did it in Alien, which I just thought was neat. And that's why I brought it up now, because I'm a host of this show and that's part of my job.
man, it is very easy to surprise Veronica Cartwright.
It turns out she's
very easy to keep her in the dark.
Yeah, exactly.
She's like, God damn it, people keep doing this to me. Veronica Cartwright just develops these horrible, horrible trust issues.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think because I've been reading this this Hollywood article, the Hollywood Reporter article, which is quite lengthy. I don't think I got all the way through it, so I don't think I got to that point because I think they eventually the director talks about it. But no, I hadn't heard that they didn't just straight up, they just told her differently. That I love it.
Yeah, yeah, kind of last minute, like Philip Kaufman like ran up to Sutherland and was like, "Hey,
yeah,
what if we did this?" And Sutherland's like, "I'm game. That sounds dope."
yeah. And of course, like when you just talk about in terms of like working with them on set, like Donald Sutherland apparently was just kind of flighty, as Siegel seems to recall. But Donald Sutherland has talked nothing but good things about working on this project. He's like, I enjoyed it very much. I had a great time. But like, I think he's put a little bit of a different energy off. Whereas like Leonard Nimoy, understandably being at the height of his Spock time, like, yeah, really at the height of his career. And I think Siegel picked him because he kind of wanted to, he gave him something different, but like all the extras and crew guys would come up and want to talk about Star Trek. And a real testament to Leonard Nimoy as a performer was just how he just kind of kept his cool every time it happened and literally gave them the time of day and actually was very nice to all the crew.
Okay.
And it actually like was like most of the actors on set noted how cool he handled it, which just it's nice to hear.
So that's actually a really kind of interesting thing because this is before Star Wars comes out, because Star Wars is 77. So they're shooting this movie around the time Star Wars comes out.
Yes.
So Philip Kaufman, the director, was one of the original directors slotted to direct Star Trek, the motion picture, with Leonard Nimoy, which is how they got to know each other as they kind of tried to figure out what they were going to do. And Star Trek fell apart because the studios didn't have any competence in science fiction. So that's why the science fiction in this movie is kind of downplayed a little bit, because science fiction wasn't doing great.
Yeah, and the opening very sci-fi, but
well, like, yes, but that's kind of it. And like, you know what I mean? Like, they could have leaned in a lot harder on this, and they didn't. And then this movie came out, and then Star Wars came out and made $1 bajillion. And then everyone was like, oh, actually, we should go back and make, sci-fi now. And so, yeah, it's an interesting mix. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about Mr. Nimoy, and that he was generally like super cool. And that, yeah, he was a little bit mad about, like, he was a great mix of a little bit mad about Spock, but also realized that being Spock was pretty cool.
Yeah, because I think he even talks about every once in a while how frustrating it was to get typecasted. And I think that's one of the reasons, and he had that conversation with this director, and the director actually like wanted to give him the opportunity to like show more of a like, well, also like harnessing what made, Leonard Nimoy, like also wanted to give him a little bit of room to play, so to speak. Like he got to inhabit 100%. He got to inhabit a bad guy sort of character.
Well, and playing like a slightly cutting edge, in quotes, kind of woo-woo psychiatrist.
Yeah, because psychiatry back then was much more.
It was very new. And also, then if it was new and you were on the fringe, it was like you were extra. And he's just perfect for that. He just knocks that out of the park.
And then you have Veronica and Jeff Goldblum's their characters being sort of the younger, changing generation.
Yeah, the weirdness.
And the idea of like that was kind of the age, as they talk about it, like where more of that generation was more about looking inward and kind of working for themselves as opposed to for the collective all, which is kind of the anti-pod people energy that San Francisco, that he claimed that like San Francisco was about. And so, yeah, so which is why when the pods tend to land in San Francisco, the energy seems weird. And so, but like then you have like their characters like running this weird mud spa. Like, because what was it? Like, yeah, they owned this spa that was sort of a new therapy at the time, or a new type of like treatment, was like soaking in mud for long periods of time. And then like getting the crap smacked out of your back.
Well, this is the first movie is about how this creeping paranoia of communism and groupthink is in the country. And it's your grandma's house, and it's just around the corner. And then this movie is about how it's in the cities, and it's the hippies, and it's the groupthink of that kind, which is both the same but very different.
Mhm.
And if you think about what we're talking about with the way the what do you want to call it? The selfishness of the 80s is beginning to creep up.
The greed is good mentality.
Yes, the greed is good mentality. This is kind of threading that needle with both saying both the greed is good mentality is the new groupthink, but also it now getting into the cities is the new groupthink, which I think is really interesting. It's not just labeling this is not a super classist movie. This movie is not labeling like all the poors as the problem. Most of the people in this movie who are part of the, not cabal is the wrong term, but are part of the conspiracy seem to be on the upper end, which I think is very progressive for a movie from 1978, because this movie could have been yikesy doozles indeed.
Well, it has a little bit of a statement too on the differing viewpoints between old age psychiatry and psychology and the new age popular wave, like the ones where like, oh, my wife can't put your book down, it's changed our lives. The whole this is what you need to do to improve your life kind of thing, versus like Leonard Nimoy's character and Jeff Goldblum's character are contrast so differently from each other between like old age and new age, where I think it's fascinating that Jeff Goldblum's character, who's younger, is actually the one kind of tied up in the old way of thinking, or the idea of not mass producing therapy, but instead, like, you know, he's being like, oh, it takes me a month, like several weeks sometimes to write one paragraph. And then just the questioning of like, but why would you make it that hard? I don't know, like there's so many competing ideologies in this film that both conflict with each other as well. It's I don't know, it's very subtle, but at the same time heavy-handed. It's a weird, glorious mix of themes that I really appreciate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. This is why I'm so glad that we chose this film for Halloween week in particular, just because there's so much going on. There's so much to talk about what's going on technically. We haven't talked about Denny Zetlin, who did the score for this movie, which is awesome.
Oh, and also, absolutely.
And also, weirdly, the only score he ever did, he did this and was friends with Philip Kaufman. And then afterwards was just like, I liked doing it, but it was just too much work and too much pressure. So I'm going to go back to my job as a psychiatrist. And that's what he does. He just decided, the
human brain was far less stressful than this job.
It was just too much work. So he decided, you know what, I'm going to do something else instead.
Yeah. So kind of as we because we're coming towards the end of our episode here, but Ken, I did want to make sure that I ask you this question as we're wrapping things up. Given that this property is as adaptable as it turns out to be, were you, say, to do your own adaptation of Body Snatchers, like, I suppose, like, what kind of themes would you explore in today's age, especially like post 2020? Like, I'm very curious to like know, maybe like, how would you approach these kind of similar themes of pod people and the other?
Ooh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
interesting.
I'm hitting you with like a real complicated question, like out of nowhere. But it's like
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
genuinely fascinated to see like just to get your sort of snap judgment idea of like what you would want to do.
I would all right, first off, I think what I would do is I would greatly play down the certainty of what's going on. I would make this maybe a lot more about gaslighting and how people aren't like, why aren't you getting in line with this thing that clearly everyone's on board with? And just dealing with that person being like, I don't know, this just doesn't seem like the thing that we want to do. And more or less everybody's on board, but they're not. And I think that right now is maybe what's the scariest thing. I think there was a certain amount of in the 50s, like, well, they're just friends with the Ruskies. And like there was a certainty like that all you need to know was that they were communists or they were Russians or they were whatever. And now I think what's really scary is the people who are kind of on the fringe, that the people who are normally cool, but it turns out there's this thing we find out about them. There's a term that there's not a word for yet, but I feel like there needs to be. And it's a term for someone who seems smart and nice. But there was this one thing I saw this one time.
Mm-hmm.
Like not a word like suspect, just like a way to put an asterisk or a footnote next to somebody's name. That person who you watched like black out at a party one time, or you watched get into a weird screaming fight about something, or just
There's
there
something
was,
hidden there.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
and you don't like you don't want to out this person. You don't want to call them crazy or dangerous. Most of the time they're very nice, but also
There's something that they haven't been addressing
uh-huh,
that they don't seem to want to talk about.
and I think that is where this in 2021, 2022, 2023
Mm-hmm.
could be very interesting. That um something I try to talk about with young filmmakers sometimes is the smell of a movie, which is that thing that like isn't there but is there.
Yeah.
Like there isn't a smell to a movie,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a vibe, there is a tone, there's a way the
Energy.
photography, energy. It's all of these things, and it's both there and it's not there. And that's what this movie does so well. This movie gives you both the heebies and the jeebies, and it does it without giving you the heebies or the jeebies, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I would say
Like
like
it,
a
yeah.
film that's equal kind of to that same sort of energy would be, say, like the Thing remake.
The Thing, or not, or, oh yes, the Thing remake from the Carpenter
Yeah,
version.
The Kurt Russell
Yes,
remake.
or let's see here, Rosemary's Baby would be
Mm-hmm.
another one. As much and Tenet, as much as Roman Polanski sucks, both those movies kind of rule. Sorry,
Yeah.
everyone,
I mean,
but those,
it's
yeah, he
unfortunate that
sucks. But
talented
yeah,
people can be really shitty people.
yeah.
Yeah, sometimes that's a thing.
Well, also we need to talk about two quick things. First off, if you are a fan of wet puppets, there are some excellent wet puppets at the end of this
Oh,
movie when they do the reveal of the Body Snatchers, which I it's not it can't be a spoiler because the movie is called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Clearly, bodies are getting snatched, so like that's not a spoiler. Also, there is a dog with a human face that I
Yes,
am
I
very
just learned
upset.
how they did that too.
Yeah,
And
I'm
glorious.
pretty upset about it. I was not a fan. I mean, I was a fan in the fact that I'm a fan of saying like, nope, no, thank you. That is
That makes me
bad.
very uncomfortable. That is
But
freaky as
man,
hell.
yeah, that is a good ass effect. That is right up there on the nope meter for me.
And it's so simple how they did it.
Yeah, it's just
Literally,
like a dog and a mask.
yeah. They took the act. So like in the movie, if folks that aren't quite so familiar with what we're talking about, but this is one of those weird what the fuck moments that just that not necessarily randomly pops up, but comes out of nowhere. And it's where like the homeless person playing the banjo is with his dog, and yeah, like he's like they're getting, and their pod gets damaged and merges, like their two pods get damaged and merge with each other. Then out of nowhere, like the dog runs out and freaks out the two people trying to play cool by literally like having his owner's face. And they did that by taking like a silicone rubber mask of that actor's face, putting a little bit of peanut butter on the inside, and just putting it on a dog, like on that same dog, and then just having the dog run up. So the tongue that you see, that is the actual dog's tongue. And he's just like licking the peanut butter inside the mask. And fuck, it's effective.
Yeah, it is. It's really effective.
It's so well done, but so simple. And it's filmmaking 101, baby. So yeah, right. No, I definitely appreciate that part.
All right. Well, with that, I think that gives that's the end of the sode. Where we give you a reason to go watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978, which you should, and you should also see Everly, which is also very good.
Yes,
but not on Shudder. Anymore.
It was the biggest reason why we didn't re-record that episode, and yeah, but it is one that we both recommend. It is a fun time.
Yep. It's not on Shudder anymore, but it is a good time.
Yeah, even if you have difficulty remembering the name, like myself.
Yeah, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, a banger, definitely worth checking out. On the Shudder, an all-time classic.
Yeah,
you get to watch like Jeff Goldblum when he's like Timothy Chalamet thin, which is pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. So fascinating. There's and so Ken, we've gone ahead and just picked the next episode.
I figured we had two, and we could just throw it to the audience again because why not?
Oh, okay, throw it at me, buddy.
All right, well, there's two movies. First off, Razorback, Russell Mulcahy's giant killer pig movie. It slaps so hard, it's super dope.
I am excited for the possibility because I've never seen that one.
I have been standing this movie for ages. However, there is another movie that is on the Shudder that I also think could be a ton of fun, and that is Night of the Demons.
Oh, okay.
Do you know anything about Night of the Demons, David?
I don't know anything about Night of the Demons.
You don't know about Night of the Demons?
I don't know about Night of the Demons.
Let's see here. Okay, let me Night of the Demons. Let's see here. Let me bring up the very quick. Let's see here. 10 teenagers party in an abandoned funeral parlor at a Halloween night. When an evil force awakens, demonic spirits keep them from leaving and turn the party into... Oh, man. All right, it disappeared. Hang on. I need to finish reading it. And turn their gathering into a living hell. So a bunch of teenagers show up at a thing, turns bad. Anyway, it's a ton of fun. So Razorback or Night of the Demons will be up on the Instagram. That thing that you all probably, hopefully remember.
I'll be posting the poll like a couple of days after we release this episode, as sort of our happy Halloween if we can get it out today.
Hey, how about this? How about David? I would say post it today, and then post it again in a couple of days. Like do a twofer. Like let's do like a long, not a long con, but like a long survey for like the twice as long as we normally do. See what the people want, whether Razorback, Night of the Demons, whether they want teenage nymphos or a giant pig.
Oh, fair enough. I will find a way. I will make it happen.
All right. Well, then the last thing that we need to say, other than it is Halloween, which means it's also the forever birthday of our mascot, Freddy Potatoes. So happy forever birthday, Freddy Potatoes. Yes, he's upstairs currently with Grandma.
Happy birthday, you big boy.
Yeah. So we have to say happy birthday to him. We have to say, hey, we're back. We have to say, hey, go watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers. We have to say, hey, check us out on Instagram, on Twitter, both at Shutter Show or at Shutter_show for our Instagram. You can check out Freddie at Twitter and Instagram at Freddie Potatoes. You can check out me on Instagram and Twitter at Ken Stachnik, KenStachnik. David, where can they find you?
They can find me at _DW Marlowe, where you can see me get up to my regular musings, everyday life, and also the occasional fun times with the person that I can now call my wife, and it actually is for real. My lovely, wonderful Katie, who's sitting here smiling at me. Love you so much, baby. And you can find us on Instagram at Shutter_show, where I will be posting everything about this episode, as well as the poll and anything else going on with us in the future.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Ken Stachnik. This has been Mr. Katie Sexton. And that has been the Shutter Show, episode number 42. We love you. Good night. And
go fuck yourselves.
Go fuck yourselves. Goodbye.
Get vaccinated, you motherfuckers.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Boosted.